right now.
Do you know people who have guns who live here?
Just about everybody.
The right to carry becomes somewhat of a rite of passage in one small town. Could they have the answer to one of the biggest issues facing America right now? Judgment Day for the so-called doomsday mom.
She will still answer according to the laws of God when she passes from this life.
Lori Vallow learns her fate following the gruesome deaths of her 2 children and the disturbing plot to kill her husband's ex-lover. Putting on the brakes. It's the end of the road for one of America's largest trucking companies. How did yellow turn red so fast, even after getting $700 million in pandemic relief money? A loophole in one of the biggest strikes of its kind. Why some A-list movie stars are still getting jobs while others are on the picket line, forced to fend for themselves.
I feel pissed off.
Good afternoon and welcome to News Nation Prime. It's Monday, July 31st, and you're watching News Nation Now. I'm Nick Smith in for Nicole Burley. We start today with concerns over rising crime in America's neighborhoods. In our latest News Nation Decision Desk HQ polling, about 50% of respondents say there's more crime happening now than there was a year ago. And as a result, many Americans are taking new precautions to protect themselves. 25% say they've bought a home security system. Another 20% say they've stopped attending large public events. And 12% say they've purchased a gun. The number of gun owners across the nation is growing, and now some cities are even encouraging carrying guns as a safety measure. News Nation's Stephanie Haynes is live in Gun Barrel City, Texas. And Stephanie, the city has a resolution asking people to actually become registered gun owners.
Nick, that is right. And let me tell you a little about Gun Barrel City. It's a town of about 6,500 people in East Texas. There's a lake here. So there's a lot of people who are leaving Dallas to come out here and just sort of relax, especially in the middle of this heat. And so we were talking to people around here, and some of them don't know that there is this resolution that was passed way back in 2013 that encourages people to have firearms. And in fact, some of the people we talked to do not even have a firearm, but they all agree that they are proud to be from a community that they believe is safe.
Gun Barrel City, Texas is just like any small town. It's an hour away from Dallas, and it's an easy escape from the hustle of city life. And if you couldn't tell by its name, guns are welcome. Do you know people who have guns who live here?
Just about everybody.
Do you have one?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Not with me.
Do you have a gun?
I do have a gun. I have several guns.
Gun Barrel City is one of at least 5 other towns across the United States who have ordinances or resolutions encouraging gun ownership. Kennesaw, Georgia, Nelson, Georgia, Nucla, Colorado, and Virgin, Utah. All of them passed such ordinance at least a decade ago.
We have a resolution that was passed April 23rd of 2013, and it's about the right to own a gun. But it goes in and talks about that every head of household should maintain a firearm, provided that they're physically and mentally capable of doing so.
The resolution is non-binding and not enforceable, meaning if you can't afford a gun or don't want one, that's okay. Same in the other cities.
I think Gun Barrel's a nice town, though. You know what I'm saying? I don't see people running around like, you know, shoot 'em, bang, bang. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, as far as I can see, it's a peaceful place.
Although the mayor says there are typically 1 or 2 violent crimes or shootings in his town per year, it's too difficult to say if that has anything to do with the resolution.
As mayor of Gun Barrel City, I don't mind saying that I strongly support stricter gun laws. I strongly support more thorough background checks and a waiting period. I don't think that more guns on the street is the answer. I think that we have to learn to respect our police departments.
Do you think that same thing here, people being encouraged to have a gun, would work in other cities?
It's a lot of rough cities, you know, and it's not about the guns, it's about the people. I always believe that a place is only as good as the people. So if you're allowing people to have weapons, you need to check with the type of people that you're allowing to have weapons.
Residents say they believe the effort is meant to deter crime in the community and offer a means of protection.
Honestly, I believe that without God, you don't have no protection without Jesus Christ. And as far as people being able to have guns to protect their families, I think we should have the right to do whatever we do to take care of our families, as long as it's reasonable.
So that's a simple cross-section of what people may think about that resolution here in Gun Barrel City. Again, passed 10 years ago, town of about 6,500 people, non-binding, and still not clear whether that resolution really has anything to do with the crime rate here, Nick.
And Stephanie, what I love about the woman you just spoke with, she made it clear, faith plays a part, but Jesus also expects me to take care of myself.
Yeah, absolutely. She brought that up immediately, right when we spoke to her. We said, what do you think about this resolution? Do you know that it exists, or, what do you believe in here? And she immediately brought up her faith. So that is something that runs very strong here in Texas, and especially right here in East Texas, Nick.
Stephanie Haynes live for us this afternoon in the Lone Star State. Stephanie, thank you so much. We're just hours away from a special town hall airing right here on News Nation, highlighting one of the biggest concerns facing Americans right now: the surge in crime. In a recent News Nation Decision Desk HQ poll, 58% of those asked said they are somewhat or very worried about crime in their community. 11% have been a victim of crime, while 23% say they've known someone who has been a victim. News Nation's senior national correspondent Brian Entin joins me now with a preview of tonight's town hall. And Brian, this is something you've been looking forward to because you have also spoken to people across the country who have had different reactions to the growing crime statistics.
Yeah, and it's happening all across the country. We've traveled to a number of different cities, really from coast to coast, that are having really big crime problems. It's interesting what Stephanie said and what the woman in her piece said. It made me think about a lot of the people I've spoken to who say, look, you have to take some personal responsibility for yourself, protecting yourself. Also, what's happening in your neighborhood. I mean, there are issues with the police, obviously. They're understaffed across the country, huge problems hiring police officers. But a lot of the people we talked to in these communities really said, look, we also have to do better. I mean, we have to take care of our neighborhoods. We have to take care of our own. We can't just put it all on the cops.
And I've noticed that it's also multifactorial, that it's not unique to any particular neighborhood or any particular demographic. Every community seems to have concerns.
They are, and it was interesting going to some of these cities, Little Rock, Arkansas, Philadelphia, Atlanta. You had certain parts of the city where most of the violent crime was happening, really serious stuff. I mean, shootings every day. We went to a couple funeral homes. I mean, they're, having funerals for young people constantly. It's so sad. And that takes a lot of the police resources. So when you go out into the suburbs where they're having more home break-ins, car break-ins, robberies, they don't get taken as seriously because the police are tied up. If you call 911 in some of these cities, I mean, you can literally be on hold 10, 15 minutes, which imagine your house just got burglarized. It's ransacked. That really makes you mad.
And Brian, this is also part of the problem too, because if a crime happens in my family, that's the most important thing to me.
That's a really, really good point that I've thought about a lot as we go to these cities, because again, I mean, if you had someone killed in your family, there's nothing worse than that. I mean, it's awful. But if you live on the other side of town and your car just got stolen and you don't have a car to get to work, I mean, that's a big deal for you too, And when there's not enough resources to take care of it all, it really makes for a crummy situation.
I know that a lot has been put into tonight's special. We're hoping everybody will tune in. What do you want the takeaway to be for our audience?
I'm so excited for this special because we're giving it the time. I mean, 2 hours of a town hall where you can really talk about these issues. Chris Cuomo will obviously be moderating it. And that's one of the frustrations I have when we go out and do this is it's just so complicated solving this. I mean, it's easy to go out and cover the crime. It's happening all over the place. You go out, you go to the neighborhoods, there's police tape up. That part's easy. But in terms of the solutions, which is what I'm excited about tonight to hear Cuomo talk about, you need time because you have to explain it. I mean, yes, you need stricter prosecutions in some areas, but you also need tough love in a lot of areas.
And it all starts with listening, which is what we're committed to doing right here at News Nation. So Chris will be doing that tonight. All right, and I know we'll wrap it up again tomorrow and talk about this as well, how things went. Brian Entin, senior national correspondent. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, man.
All right. Next week, only on News Nation, join us for a special live town hall edition of Cuomo focused on crime in America. Chris hosts a live audience from across the country, giving viewers their chance to put questions to people in power. Tune in tonight at 8 Eastern, right here on News Nation. Now to some breaking news out of Idaho, where Lori Vallow has been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Vallow was found guilty in May of murdering her 2 children, 16-year-old Tylee Ryan and 7-year-old Joshua Vallow, and for the murder of her husband's first wife, Tammy Daybell. Vallow opted to give a statement prior to sentencing, during which she claims she has communicated with the spirits of her victims. A family member right now is speaking. I want to take you live to that. Let's listen in.
It's a bucket of poo-poo. How about that? Y'all can maybe put that on camera.
Kay, did you want to say anything?
I'm talked out. I'm good. I'm very. I am. I guess I should say I'm very pleased with the verdict. Not the verdict. The sentences.
The sentencing.
And I couldn't have asked for. We got everything we asked for. I believe.
We did. Absolutely.
And so it's all good. I'm happy Judge Boyce could see through her BS that she and her angels and all that and her near-death experience when she had Tylee. Never heard that story before.
Yeah, that's another
but
makeup
I don't know
story.
if it didn't happen. Just saying, I never heard it before.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all.
And I can guarantee you all this:
more.
Tammy was not in her dreams. She was not friends with Tammy.
Yeah.
Kay, can I follow that up with, you made a very powerful victim impact statement, and you talked about how much you love JJ and carrying him in your arms. To hear Lori sit there and say that you came to her and told her she did nothing wrong, how hard was it for you to control yourself in that moment?
Not hard at all, Justin, because anything that comes out of her mouth is a lie. So there was nothing she could have said today to upset me or anything more. I'm done giving her control. It's over. Well, I'm walking out of here. I'm good. I'm happy. This is as good as it'll get. We'll never have JJ. We'll never have Tylee back again. But or Tammy's family won't have her back. But this is the closest thing we can get to satisfaction. And so next is next I'm already thinking about Arizona and Charles's trial and Chad's trial in April. So and then we have Brandon's too down in Arizona. So we still got a lot to do. We're still on the
That, of course, were the grandparents of JJ and Tylee. They have been advocating for justice for their grandchildren from the very beginning. We, of course, will continue to follow this. Our own Nancy Liu will have a complete wrap of this entire story, including the sentencing of Lori Vallow Daybell at the top of the next hour. But right now, I want to turn to the latest in the Hunter Biden investigation. The Hunter Biden investigation could enter a new phase this afternoon, as the House Oversight Committee is set to hear high-profile testimony from Hunter's former business partner. Now, Devon Archer is expected to testify about the extent of President Biden's involvement in his son's foreign business dealings, potentially roping the Bidens into a deeper scandal. This comes as the Archer is wrangling with the DOJ about when to report to prison on unrelated charges. Chief Washington correspondent Blake Berman joins us live. Blake, what's expected from this testimony? The Hunter Biden saga seems to be the gift no one wants that keeps giving.
Certainly something that the White House and Democrats don't want to touch, don't want to deal with, but it is very much a story in the forefront. And the main character today, if you will, was Devon Archer, former best friend of Hunter Biden, former business partner to Hunter Biden as well. Nick, he walked up to Capitol Hill, sort of all smiles earlier today. Let me show you that video as Devon Archer walked into the Hill today. But he left, we're told, about, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes ago. So he testified for a little bit more than 4 hours to the House Oversight Committee. This was not before the cameras. This was behind closed doors, a transcribed interview. Now, who is he? Devon Archer, Hunter Biden's former best friend, former business partner, and the interest here among Republicans is trying to link Joe Biden with Hunter Biden's foreign business deals. That includes the Ukrainian energy company Burisma, which was paying Hunter Biden, while then Vice President Biden was overseeing the Obama administration's Ukraine policy. For example, the head of that committee, Congressman James Comer, wrote the following to Archer's attorney in advance of this hearing, saying, quote, Mr. Archer played a significant role in the Biden family's business deals abroad, including but not limited to China, Russia, and Ukraine. Additionally, while undertaking these ventures with the Biden family, your client met with then Vice President Biden on multiple occasions, including the White House. So that's what Republicans were probing going into this. President Biden, though, of course, we should mention, has not been formally linked to any criminal wrongdoing. One Democratic member of the House Oversight Committee says that Archer's testimony clears the president.
Blake, are you still there with me?
Yep, I got you. I don't.
Blake, we're talking about clearing the president because they are still looking for that direct link, that smoking gun of sorts there, where we clearly hear Hunter say, hey, let me call my dad. My dad wants this. Are we seeing that? Are they hearing that?
Well, one thing that Republicans are pointing out, Nick, is that they say, and again, I stress that this was an interview taken behind closed doors, right? So you got Democrats coming out saying one thing, Republicans coming out and saying another. That's how Washington works, especially when you're dealing with the president. So Democrats have come out and said, look, what we heard today doesn't show any sort of link whatsoever to the president, then the vice president, and after his vice presidency, and Hunter Biden's business dealings. However, what Republicans are pointing to is phone calls that they say were taken via speakerphone, in which Hunter Biden was around his business associates, and his father was on the other end of those phone calls, and there were speakerphone conversations. So they're essentially saying, look, Hunter Biden would bring his father, obviously incredibly influential, into these conversations, and thus there might be some sort of link there. Devon Archer, as I just mentioned, Nick, walked out of that transcribed interview 10 minutes ago, and so we're just starting to get some of the reaction here, but that's what both sides are starting
So
to see.
you will learn some of what he had to share this afternoon. But let me go switch over to, so there's no sense in speculating on that. We'll know what he had to say behind closed doors shortly enough. But Blake, what happens now with the White House and their response? They have to know that the Hunter situation continues to be this albatross around their neck.
Hunter Biden will not go away. His father is running for the presidency of the United States again. He's the current president of the United States, and Republicans at every single turn are going to probe and ask about the many business dealings, the many questions involving Hunter Biden. And oh, by the way, as we know, Nick, Hunter Biden has some pretty big legal problems, potential pretty big legal problems, as that whole plea deal with his taxes just blew up last week, right? So Republicans are going to seize on this. You asked about the White, and keep it in the forefront. You asked about the White House. It's been interesting because the line from the president when he was running from the presidency was that he never spoke to his son about his business dealings. That seemed to shift recently with the White House saying the president was never involved with Hunter Biden's business dealings. Two very different things, right? Speaking to him about it and actually being involved about it with it. So the White House is now sort of pivoting, but bottom line with it, Nick, they are going to say, as they've said in the past week, and I expect continue to say, that the president had nothing to do whatsoever with Hunter Biden's business dealings. Republicans, though, will point surely to these phone calls and continue to probe and ask questions about what Joe Biden knew at the time, how much he was involved at the time, if he was at all.
Blake, again, like we said at the top of this segment, the gift that keeps on giving that no one really wants. Blake, thank you so much. I know we'll speak with you again later. After nearly a century of shipping freight all across the country, trucking giant Yellow Corp is shutting down their operations. They're also laying off about 30,000 of their employees. The company expected to file for bankruptcy this afternoon. Yellow, a less than truckload or LTL carrier, was known for offering some of the cheapest rates in the trucking sector. Their downfall coming just 3 years after receiving a $700 million bailout loan from the U.S. government, a move that will continue to impact taxpayers. Here with us now to talk about the ripple effect this could have on the economy is Todd Spencer, president and owner-operator of Independent Drivers Association. Todd, thank you so much for being here with me this afternoon. Let's start with what's happening now. What is this going to mean for the economy and for taxpayers?
Well, certainly today is a sad day for the 30,000 employees of Yellow Freight. This was one of the old line carriers that at one time, among the group that at one time were the biggest players there was in trucking. That all changed with the Motor Carrier Act of 1980 that basically economically deregulated trucking and kind of created some of the fallout that, you know, we're still dealing with today, in that it's a tough business. Oftentimes it's a predatory business. Yellow's problems are long-standing problems. They haven't, you know, they weren't just made of the last year or so. In many instances, they kind of overextended themselves. And again, you mentioned earlier, they were offering some of the lowest rates in the country to move goods. And you know, that's kind of an impossible formula to follow when you have big overhead. And you know, it finally caught up with them.
Todd, what happens to all of these workers now? You just mentioned some of the, employees that have been there, many of whom I'm assuming for years. We do know that there's also a shortage in the trucking industry. Does this automatically mean, Todd, that some of these men and women who have been driving for Yellow will find employment, or is that not guaranteed?
Good drivers, good workers can always find employment. You know, it may not be at the same level economically that it was previously. And, you know, you mentioned a minute ago, one of the biggest myths in trucking in that there's a shortage of drivers. There's not a shortage of drivers. There is a shortage. The problem is retention. Drivers come and go. Many trucking companies have 100% turnover of drivers every year. So there's plenty of jobs out there. Good people can fill those jobs, and hopefully now any kind of a job move is going to be strenuous, and it may not be as good, but you know, again, this isn't the best of time for anyone. We're optimistic that things will look up going forward.
Todd, you said something there that I want to circle back on. You talked about retention. What's happening in the industry that it's so hard to hold on to good drivers with experience?
Well, realistically, the job of trucking isn't like others in that the work weeks are quite frequently 70 to 80 hours long. And there aren't that many people that are interested in working a job that actually requires pretty much twice the commitment that other workers are going to make just to simply make a paycheck. And for many truckers, that they live their lives out on the road. And that's not an easy gig either. Quality of life, family time, all of those are just, you know, they're just too many instances. They're just kind of non-existent. So yeah, people will leave jobs like that. And, you know, the trucking itself has to address its chronic long-term problems, or we'll see more of this.
And at the end of the day, you have consumers sitting back, not really paying attention to how their goods and services are shipped across the country, and the men and women behind the wheel making that happen now. 30,000 fewer of them, and 22,000 of them being your union members. Todd Spencer, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Hey, always glad to.
Thank you, sir. Up next, behind bars in the Bahamas, a Georgia mother and former pageant queen arrested for plotting to kill her estranged husband. And you won't believe how police busted her. And he became a sensation on both the big screen and on TV. We go live out to LA with a look back at Paul Reubens' career, best known for his role as Pee Wee Herman, after he died today at the age of 70. You're watching News Nation Now. We'll be back after the break.
A special edition of Cuomo, Crime in America, tonight only on News Nation.
Meet the team behind the team. The coach, the manager, and the snack dad, all using Chase to keep up with their finances. The coach helps save goals here because she saved for soccer camp there. And check this out. The manager deposited a check. Magic. And the snack dad, he's getting paid back. Orange slices. Because this team all has Chase. Smart bankers, convenient tools, one bank with the power of both. Chase, make more of what's yours.
Make this the summer you started here and ended up all the way up here. The summer you gathered with a few friends and later a few hundred more. Found the perfect place to dive in and an even better way to dry off. Make this the summer of Jeep.
During the summer of Jeep, get 2.9% financing or $2,000 bonus cash on the 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee. Visit Jeep.com for new inventory available near you.
Attention firefighters, first responders, military base personnel, and airport workers. Listen closely to this important legal announcement. Have you been exposed to chemical-based firefighting foam? If so, you may be entitled to a substantial cash award without going to court. For decades, aqueous film-forming foam, or AFFF, has been used to extinguish liquid fuel fires. A scientific study has now shown that the chemicals used to make AFFF are highly toxic to humans and can cause a significant risk of developing several types of cancer, including kidney, pancreatic, thyroid, prostate, bladder, testicular, liver, or non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. If you or a loved one are a firefighter, first responder, airport worker, or member of the military that has used firefighting foam and has been diagnosed with cancer, please call the Negligence Network to file your claim today. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call the Negligence Network to see if you're eligible for substantial compensation. Call 1-800-500-1636. That's 1-800-500-1636.
Well, changing question. Are you keeping as much of your investment gains as possible? High taxes can erode returns quickly, so you need a tax-optimized portfolio. At Creative Planning, our money managers and specialists work together to make sure your portfolio and wealth are managed in a tax-efficient manner. It's what you keep that really matters. Why not give your wealth a second look? Book your free meeting today at creativeplanning.com. Creative Planning, a richer way to wealth.
The FBI calls it house stealing, the latest scam where a cyber thief transfers the title of your home out of your name and steals your hard-earned equity. Fortunately, there's an easy way to protect yourself. Find out if you're already a victim at HomeTitleLock.com.
Pain hits fast, so get relief fast. Only Tylenol Rapid Release Gels have laser-drilled holes. They release medicine fast for fast pain relief. And now, get relief without a pill with Tylenol Dissolve Packs. Relief without the water.
Carvana has hundreds of thousands of 5-star reviews and counting.
The whole process was really simple and easy, and this is my third time selling to Carvana.
You just enter your license plate or your VIN, answer a few questions, boom, you get a reel off.
Sell your car to Carvana today.
I've always been prone to hair thinning.
I was getting older. I was under a lot of stress.
I started taking Nutrafol.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement.
I am back to me.
Start your hair growth journey at Nutrafol.com.
Did he jump or was he pushed, Miss Marple?
How do you commit the perfect murder?
Do you think we'll be able to find the cause of death?
Something like this, it doesn't matter.
You wouldn't say that to anyone else.
You aren't anyone else.
What if we've got it all wrong?
The data is telling the truth.
I'm saving with Liberty Mutual, Mom. They customize your car insurance, so you only pay for what you need. You could save $700 just by switching.
Oh, let me put a reminder on my phone. On the top of the pile.
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Welcome back to News Nation Now. I'm Nick Smith. Trouble in paradise. A former beauty queen is in jail in the Bahamas after police exposed her murder-for-hire plot to kill her husband. 36-year-old Lindsay Shiver allegedly came up with the scheme after her husband learned she was having an affair in their Caribbean vacation home. The former Auburn football player planned on filing for divorce, but the mother of three had different plans. Lindsay, her 28-year-old lover Terrence Bethel, and another man were all arrested in the Bahamas after police uncovered a series of text messages while investigating a different crime. News Nation's Elizabeth Prawn joins us live. Elizabeth, police found some pretty damning evidence on a device that was supposed to be encrypted.
You're so right, Nick. We're starting to put some of these pieces together. And as you mentioned, although she wasn't necessarily alone in this plot, authorities are saying that she is the mastermind, and now she's sitting in a Bahamian jail in Nassau. You mentioned those two younger men. Allegedly, they were working with her to plot to kill her 38-year-old college sweetheart, Richard. And during the marriage, the couple had a second home there. If you're curious as to why there is a connection to this now Georgia resident, these couples that have this home in the Bahamas. So Richard filed for divorce, as you mentioned, after learning of this alleged affair, and police say that was when the plot was orchestrated. Now, you mentioned the cell phone that they found. Authorities found the cell phone at a bar. It's named Grabber's Bar and Grill. It's in Great Guanacaste, which is an island north of Nassau. And that's when they found the cell phone and they were able to uncover some of these WhatsApp messages. So they weren't necessarily clear on exactly whose phone it is at this time. One of the articles referenced the fact that it was a suspect who was involved in an alleged break-in with at the bar, and that's who the phone belongs to. We did speak with one legal analyst who said, hiring a hitman to kill partners nowadays is one of the easier crimes to uncover because there is typically a paper trail. But another authority told us an expert, how authorities were able to charge the trio and get them in custody. Here he is.
What conspiracy means is simply an agreement between two or more people to engage in some criminal conduct. And what's important here is you have to have an overt act in order to charge these crimes. What that means is that one or more of these individuals would have had to have actually done something toward the commission of this crime.
And Nick, you talked a little bit about this couple. So the estranged couple met when they were in college. He was a football player. She was a pageant queen, and they had 3 sons together. Robert is now the executive vice president of a life insurance company in Georgia. Her public persona was quite that of a doting mother and a wife. In fact, some of her social media posts, this one in March of 2020, she said, quote, "The key to a perfect marriage is having 2 imperfect people who refuse to give up on each other." Fast forward now to Friday, it was her first appearance with the 2 men in that Bahamian jail. They didn't file a plea. Their next court appearance is going to be in October. Nick.
Yeah, I would agree with her possibly being imperfect. I think that's a fair assessment. Elizabeth, Lindsay Shiver is an American citizen currently held in the Bahamas. Is there any insight on if or when she could be extradited back to the U.S.?
I mean, that's really the million-dollar question. If you look at the relationship between the Bahamas and the U.S., there is an extradition treaty. Both entities have to agree on the definition of the crime that is committed. As we mentioned, there's conspiracy charges now. If there is enough evidence to charge this woman for a murder-to-hire plot, which is something we will see in the next couple months, there's a good chance, any expert will tell you, she will be extradited to the United States. Nick.
Wow, Elizabeth. I know that we will continue to follow this one. Elizabeth Pran, thank you so much. I appreciate the help. Up next, the comedic actor best known for his role as Pee Wee Herman has died at age 70. A live report from Hollywood as reactions start pouring in. You're watching News Nation Now on News Nation. News for all America.
Tonight in a live News Nation town hall event.
911, where's your emergency?
Oh my God, there's an active shooter there.
Chris Cuomo takes an in-depth look at crime all across America in front of a live studio audience. A special edition of Cuomo tonight only on News Nation.
Subway refreshed everything, and now they're slicing their deli meats fresh. That's why this QB prefers the new 5-meat beast.
And this QB prefers it.
And if we prefer it,
we know you'll prefer it too.
Are you trying to out-spokesperson me?
Maybe.
My most important kitchen tool, my brain. So I choose Nariva Plus. Unlike some others, Nariva Plus is a multitasker supporting 6 key indicators of brain health to help keep me sharp. Nariva, think bigger.
When you drive a Ram, summer is more than a season. It's an opportunity to load up on more toys, to stop looking for fun and be the one who brings it, and to make every day even more inviting than the last. Make this the summer you drive a Ram.
During the Ram Make This the Summer event, get 10% below MSRP on all 2023 Ram 1500 Bighorn models.
Hi, I'm Daniel, the founder of Pretty Litter. By working with scientists and veterinarians, I was able to develop a long-lasting litter with advanced odor control, low dust, and most importantly, color-changing technology. So give it a try. Visit prettylitter.com today.
I had 8 UTIs in 1 year. This inspired me and my partner Spencer to launch Eucora. Eucora makes effective urinary tract health products.
It truly works miracles.
The peace of mind I've been looking for.
Go to eucora.com to learn more.
For people who are a little intense about hydration, Neutrogena Hydro Boost. Lightweight, clinically proven, 48-hour hydration for that healthy skin glow. Neutrogena, for people with skin.
When you get approved with Drive Time, you get the real deal.
It's the Drive Time Real Deal Maker.
It lets you customize the real down payment and monthly payment of the car you want to buy.
That's super smart.
And the deal you make on your phone is the deal you pay.
You make the deal yourself.
Get the real deal at drivetime.com.
Once retired, Marcus decided, I will never again work for another man or woman. I abandoned my corporate phone plan, and I'll get a new plan with Consumer Cellular for up to half the cost.
Let's go, birds.
When freedom calls, we're here to answer.
Are you still struggling with your bra? It's time for you to try Knix, makers of the world's comfiest wireless bras. For revolutionary support without underwires and sizes up to a G-cup. Find your new favorite bra today at Knix.com.
Why did we choose Safelite? For us, driving around is the only way we can get our baby to sleep. So when our windshield cracked, we can't drive this. We needed it fixed right. We went to Safelite.com. There's no one else we'd trust. Their experts replaced our windshield and recalibrated our car's advanced safety system. They focus on our safety, so we can focus on this little guy.
Safelite Repair, Safelite Replace.
Did you know you can save with GoodRx, even if you have insurance?
You know, I thought my prescription was covered until it wasn't, but GoodRx helps with that.
I work for myself, so I buy my own insurance. And I still check GoodRx.
I'm on Medicare. I check GoodRx because it can beat my copay. Who wouldn't like that?
Even if you have insurance, GoodRx can help you save.
Okay, we'll see you next time.
Another good reason to check GoodRx.
My visiting angel's caregiver has been by my side. I would be lost without her. And my daughter doesn't have to worry about me like she used to. My visiting angel makes sure I'm safe and sound in my own home. She's not just a caregiver. She's essential to me and my family.
Join us in celebrating 25 years of personal home care.
Cars will break down, and when they do, it's too late. If your car is out of warranty, it leaves you with two choices: get stuck paying for expensive repairs, or one phone call to CarShield. Their administrators pay for your covered repairs so you don't have to. Your coverage includes roadside assistance, towing, rental, and so much more. Plus, with their nationwide network, you choose the mechanic or dealer. Best of all, there's coverage for every wallet size. Make the smart call before it's too late. Call CarShield today.
I'm flying! I am the luckiest boy in the world. My wish to fly has...
Actor Paul Reubens has died at the age of 70. The comedic actor whose childlike alter ego as Pee Wee Herman became a sensation both on the big screen, and TV, and the stage, as you just saw there. That's from a live performance of his, I believe, in New York City. Reubens died after a private battle with cancer, his death sending shockwaves through Hollywood and beyond. Joining us now is KTLA Entertainment anchor Sam Rubin. Sam, you know, I look back at Pee Wee Herman. I'm of that age where I do remember him as an entertainer in his prime. This is definitely a shock to the community.
I tell you what, it is a surprise, Nick, because people were unaware until today, not only of his passing, but that Paul Reubens had been battling cancer for 6 years. In a pair of media statements sent out by his estate, it acknowledged that Paul had decided to wage a private battle. People were not aware of his ill health, and now the sad news, of course, of his death, but people also celebrating Paul Reubens' life. Pee Wee Herman started out as a character at the Groundlings. This, of course, the improv group. Please accept my apology. This statement from Paul Reubens, written, I think, with the knowledge he was going to pass away, to his fans. Please accept my apology for not going public with what I've been facing the last 6 years. I've always felt a huge amount of love and respect from my fans, friends, and supporters. I've loved you all so much and enjoyed making art for you. I think the key word there, Nick, is art. This was really artful stuff. Really interesting and exciting what he elected to do. Paul Reubens did. Really beautiful and layered and intricate. What was so interesting to me is that Pee Wee's Playhouse worked on two levels. Kids enjoyed it as kids, but there was also a lot in it for adults. So he really accomplished something by developing this character in an improv group. He did a live show. This is a very famous venue, of course, here in Los Angeles at the Roxy. That sold out for 5 months. HBO special after that, a CBS series, then a movie, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and a director you may have heard of, Tim Burton. Tim Burton's very first movie with Pee Wee Herman. So there's quite a legacy here. And I think people really thought, particularly the character, we didn't know Paul Reubens very well, but we certainly knew Pee Wee Herman and the entertainment he brought to multiple generations.
And Sam, what about family? I can tell you, you talked about him being a private person there. I'm not even sure if Reubens was married. Was he married? Did he have children?
As far as I know, and I don't know conclusively, there is no mention of next of kin. There is no mention of leaving a spouse or a partner behind. So, you know, what happens sometimes is people have the character live in the public eye. And though Paul Reubens did do other things as an actor, he's, you know, certainly, and he would know this as well as anyone, mostly known for Pee Wee Herman. So I think probably, and I certainly don't mean to speak for him, he thought any revelations about his personal life would be distracting. Is Pee Wee Herman in real life married? Does Pee Wee Herman in real life have children? That kind of thing. But as we're looking at these clips, you can see, Nick, how layered it is. I mean, people are talking about this with regard to the Barbie movie. There's a lot for the eyes to take in. And if you watch this stuff with attention, it's really funny on so many different levels.
You know, Sam, I do want to ask you, though, because we'd be remiss if we did not mention how he did have a career hiccup, but he seemed to still maintain his reputation and relationships with those in the entertainment industry.
He did. He had an embarrassing moment in an adult movie theater where he was arrested during a sting. And this is way back when, you know, many, many years ago, and was by himself, involved with himself, and that story became widely spread. And there was a period, a word not used back then, of sort of cancellation, where he was essentially on ice. But he did come back from that. And I think there was a renewed appreciation once that incident, as embarrassing as it was more or less forgotten, an appreciation of all that Pee Wee meant to so many. And one thing that happened, because Pee Wee initially in the 80s and the 90s, people who enjoyed him as a child are adults now, and he enjoyed it all again. That first movie particularly, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, was really, really well thought of. And so Paul Reubens very much considered a pioneer. The Groundlings, of course, the home of Will Ferrell, so many members of the SNL cast, but one of the very first huge breakouts from the Groundlings, the improv group here in Los Angeles, was the character of Pee Wee Herman created by Paul Reubens.
Paul Reubens dead today at the age of 70. Sam Rubin, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you, Nick.
Up next, dozens of former cabinet officials under the Trump administration have declined to publicly support the former president's third bid for the White House. We'll explain after the break.
When you find your reason to go on, let it pull you past the doubt, past the pain, and past your limits. No matter what, we go on. BioFreeze.
This is an important message for anyone and everyone on or eligible for Medicare. If Medicare is important to you, then you need to hear this message, because Medicare benefits matter to millions of Americans. Did you know Medicare has different parts, including Medicare Part A and Part B, often called Original Medicare? And then there's Medicare Part C, representing Medicare Advantage plans, and Part D for prescription drug coverage. Call 800-218-5045 now for your free Medicare coverage checkup. We can look up your plan and see if you're missing out on a plan with extra benefits, or if your income qualifies you to reduce costs on your prescription medications. Did you know there are different enrollment periods, like the Medicare annual enrollment period, when beneficiaries can enroll in or change coverage? But there are also certain conditions or qualifications that may allow you to qualify for a special enrollment period any time of the year. So call the number on your screen now for your free Medicare coverage checkup. This is a free service that you can call at absolutely no cost to you.
I'm on Medicare. I called to see if my income qualified for a lower prescription medication cost. The friendly agent was very knowledgeable, and I found out that I qualified for a special enrollment period. I'm so glad that I called.
We can look up your plan and see if you're missing out on a plan with extra benefits. We can also check to see if your income qualifies you to reduce the cost of your prescription medications. And we can even tell you if you qualify for a special enrollment period. It's your free Medicare coverage checkup at absolutely no cost to you. Just call 800-218-5045 and you can speak with a licensed agent who can check up on your plan and answer your questions. The Medicare Benefits and Questions line is open, and anyone on or eligible for Medicare can call. The Call and Medicare Coverage Checkup is free with no obligation. Call now. We love talking to people with Medicare, and the call is free. Just call 800-218-5045. 800-218-5045.
Pain hits fast, so get relief fast. Only Tylenol Rapid Release Gels have laser-drilled holes. They release medicine fast for fast pain relief. And now, get relief without a pill with Tylenol Dissolve Packs. Relief without the water.
Did he jump or was he pushed, Miss Marple?
How do you commit the perfect murder?
Do you think we'll be able to find the cause of death?
Something like this, it doesn't add up.
You wouldn't say that to anyone else.
You aren't anyone else.
What if we've got it all wrong?
The data is telling the truth.
Why did we choose Safelite? We were loading our SUV when crack. Safelite came right to us, and we could see exactly when they'd arrive. With the replacement we could trust. That's service the way we want it.
Safelite Repair, Safelite Replace.
Tonight, in a live News Nation Town Hall event.
911, where's your emergency? Oh my God, there's an active shooter there.
Chris Cuomo takes an in-depth look at crime all across America in front of a live studio audience. A special edition of Cuomo, tonight, only on News Nation.
Well, the property manager of Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate making his first appearance in court today in connection to charges stemming from the classified documents case against the former president. Carlos de Oliveira is accused of conspiring with Trump to delete security footage sought by investigators as they attempted to retrieve those documents from Mar-a-Lago. He is charged with conspiracy to obstruct justice and lying to investigators. Security barriers now surround the Fulton County Courthouse in downtown Atlanta, a very visual sign the district attorney there, Fani Willis, could soon announce an indictment of the former president for his role in trying to overturn the 2020 election. Willis's investigation stems from the now infamous phone call he had with Georgia's Secretary of State, where Trump asked him to find more votes. It is one of several legal issues the former president is facing, including a special counsel investigation into his role in the January 6th demonstration. Today, Trump saying on social media he expects an indictment in that case any day now. Yet, despite the legal issues, President Trump remains the clear favorite to win the Republican bid for president, currently leading by more than 35 points. But some high-profile Republicans, including those who once sat on President Trump's cabinet, don't want him to win the nomination. NBC News reporting just 4 of the 44 former cabinet members are planning to endorse Trump in 2024. Former Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney and Attorney General Bill Barr. Julia Manchester covers the national politics for our friends over at The Hill and is here now to discuss. Julia, only those two that I named are not supporting Mr. Trump in his 2024 bid. What do you make of this recent revelation in this report by NBC News?
Look, it doesn't surprise me. I think there are quite a bit of past figures from the Trump administration who have come out against the former president very publicly. And I think we could continue to see that. But ultimately, Nick, I don't think it really matters when it comes to the GOP primary electorate. We just saw the Real Clear Politics average on the screen there. And then a New York Times Siena College poll came out today showing Donald Trump 37 points ahead of Ron DeSantis in that poll. And then, those two at double digits and then everyone else in the field at single digits. So clearly, I think Donald Trump right now is the presumptive front runner and does appear to be on track to get the nomination. Now, a lot could happen between now and the Iowa caucuses in January. But, these former cabinet officials saying they won't endorse Trump, they're making a statement, but I don't think it will really play with the GOP primary electorate.
Exactly. That doesn't seem like it will play, and neither does the the op-ed piece that Mitt Romney wrote a few days ago. Julia, who is he trying to speak to? Because it seems to me that Republican voters are making up, or at least those who are looking at primary candidates have made up their mind. They want Trump and nothing less than.
Look, I think Senator Romney understands the state of the Republican Party, and he is in many ways an outcast now. He has positioned himself as a never-Trump Republican or a very anti-Trump Republican, one of the most vocal in the Senate, let alone Congress. So, look, I think he understands the stake of this. I think this really has to go along with his brand and what he personally stands for. I don't think Mitt Romney would, expect to maybe make a huge splash with primary voters with that op-ed alone. But I think there is this feeling among some Republicans who are in the Romney camp that they need to make an effort to speak out against Trump and to push back against the idea of his candidacy.
Julia, over the weekend, The Hill reporting that Mr. DeSantis seems to be on his third round of layoffs within his campaign. What's happening? Are we watching a reboot 3.0 of Mr. DeSantis, or are we watching Mr. DeSantis fizzle out?
Well, according to his campaign, we're watching a reset. Earlier last week, his campaign sent out a memo to supporters saying that they were resetting and that they were going to focus on his great American comeback, a message that includes themes like the economy and pushing back against China. And we saw that today in New Hampshire, where in Rochester, he announced his Declaration of Economic Independence plan to voters up there, very much trying to stick on the economy. This is an issue that plays very well with voters. It is most likely going to be, as it always is, the #1 issue for voters at the ballot box. And DeSantis is really trying to drill in that for Republican primary voters. Whether it will make a difference, we'll see. Like I said, that polling has Donald Trump 37 points ahead of Ron DeSantis. Even though Ron DeSantis has consistently been in second place, he has not gained any traction really in a lot of polling against Donald Trump. So we'll see if this reset works, but it's going to be a tough road ahead for him.
Yeah, I think at one point, Julia, they actually said, we're just going to let Ron DeSantis be Ron DeSantis. And we have to see if that's what the people actually want. Julia Manchester, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Thanks, Nick. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. And you were great this weekend. I saw you. Up next, once a soldier, always a soldier, the country music star who's planning to re-enlist in the Army at the age of 59. You're watching News Nation Now.
Tonight in a live News Nation town hall event.
911, where's your emergency? Oh my God, there's an active shooter there.
Chris Cuomo takes an in-depth look at crime all across America in front of a live studio audience. A special edition of Cuomo tonight only on News Nation.
Do you have difficulty hearing your TV? Or have trouble hearing conversations? Then you would benefit from Nano hearing aids. Other hearing aids are expensive and cost thousands of dollars. But if you call now, you can get 2 Nano CIC rechargeable hearing aids for only $297. Don't be fooled by overpriced hearing aids ever again. The Nano CIC rechargeable hearing aid is a true hearing aid, not an amplifier. And they offer superior noise reduction and a tiny in-the-ear design that is nearly invisible. And best of all, they are incredibly affordable. Call now and get 2 Nano CIC rechargeable hearing aids for only $297, or opt into our payment plan of 4 easy interest-free payments. Plus, if you call now, we'll add a portable charging dock, and your shipping is absolutely free. The Nano hearing aids come with outstanding lifetime customer support and a 45-day money-back guarantee. Supplies are limited, so you must act now.
Call 1-800-299-1644. That's 1-800-299-1644.
The FBI calls it house stealing, the latest scam where a cyber thief transfers the title of your home out of your name and steals your hard-earned equity.
It's roughly 60 to 90 days for that person to even figure out that they're the victim of this crime. You start getting foreclosure notices and you realize you've got 4 mortgages on your house that you didn't even know existed.
Unfortunately, it's on you to protect yourself. You might already be a victim. Check your title status now at HomeTitleLock.com.
At Omaha Steaks, we do burgers differently. We take a premium aged steak like this and turn it into a pure ground burger like this. So this is actually a ribeye. This is a New York strip top sirloin, beef brisket, and this. This is a filet mignon. For a limited time, our Burger Perfection flight comes with 20 big, juicy burgers, all for just $79.99, plus free shipping. Get it today at omahasteaks.com/TV. This is Burger Perfection, guaranteed.
Okay, get it. Good boy. Okay. Oh, that's a big one, Max. What was a brand new day becomes a brand new memory. Tonight? All right.
It started to manifest itself in nightmares.
Countless veterans like Quentin live with the invisible wounds of war, and sadly, roughly 20 a day take their own lives.
K9s for Warriors saved Molly, and then she saved me. She made me whole.
For $20 a month, you can help us rescue and train shelter dogs to serve veterans in need. Call us at 800-273-3414 and save 2 lives. That's 800-273-3414.
Hi, I'm Daniel, the founder of Pretty Litter. By working with scientists and veterinarians, I was able to develop a long-lasting litter with advanced odor control, low dust, and most importantly, color-changing technology. So give it a try. Visit prettylitter.com today.
I had 8 UTIs in 1 year. This inspired me and my partner Spencer to launch Eucora. Eucora makes effective urinary tract health products.
It truly works miracles. The peace of mind I've been looking for.
Go to eucora.com to learn more.
Can you believe this? Doug Flutie and Frank Thomas. You guys look great. Once I turn 40...
Let me guess, less energy, less drive?
Definitely.
It's not your fault. It happens to every man. Testosterone levels drop as you age.
It happened to you guys?
Yep.
So what did you do?
We got Nugenix Total T.
This unique man-boosting formula is powered by Testofen, a patented key ingredient clinically researched to help increase testosterone levels. Nugenix is the #1 doctor-recommended testosterone booster in the USA, #1 at GNC, and #1 at Walmart. But you can only get your complimentary bottle by texting ROOM to 42424.
That does it. I gotta get Nugenix.
Just send a text. Yeah, for a complimentary bottle. And by the way, she'll like it too.
Get your complimentary bottle of Nugenix now. Text ROOM to 42424.